CBS News producer Andy Triay, who covered the aviation beat for us for many years, joins me now. Andy, first of all, thanks for joining us, because you have this unique perspective, not only on this new aircraft, but on the entire beat in general. And you were among the first to actually, American journalists, to actually get a look at this aircraft when Airbus was first developing it, this A380.
Right, the A380, it's known as a double-decker airplane. It seats, I don't know, 525 people, I think, in the maximum capacity. And we flew over to Toulouse, France, where they were building it, and they hadn't let a lot of people in to see it, and they finally started letting some people in, and we went in and looked at it. And I remember they were only allowing us to see the first class part of this humongous airline, and it was very nice with a spiral staircase, and there were showers. And when the folks from Airbus walked out of the plane to take a call, we opened up the door to the back that they were still building, and it just was forever in terms of seats. It was forever, as you can see, and it was two
like
stories of that.
Football field,
yeah,
almost,
easily. I don't have the statistics in front of me, but easily a long way to the back.
And so what struck you about that?
You know, one of the things as this airplane came into service and passed all its testing was, how do you evacuate 500 plus people in an emergency? And that was a concern of safety officials from countries all over the world. Airbus developed systems with dual slides and things of the sort, and they passed all the tests, but that's never been put to the test. And today, I think, was the first time an Airbus plane had to evacuate people. Luckily, it doesn't appear that they had to pull slides and have people get off, but they could only evacuate this plane from one side, and they had to use stairs, and it took over 2 hours to get 500 people off.
2 hours to get them out today. Now, let's talk about what happened. It was in the middle of the night last night. This aircraft was actually going from Singapore to Sydney.
Correct.
When it had this massive engine failure. What's the latest that
we don't know what caused it, but it's something caused one of the engines to explode.
Let me just make sure, when you say this was not just an engine shut down and we can use the other, there's 4 engines on this aircraft.
There's 4 engines on this aircraft. Pilots train meticulously, if there's a problem with one engine, to shut it down and go to the nearest airport that they can get to, or the nearest airport they can fly to safely with 3 engines. This was an engine explosion of some sort.
And literally the engine exploded.
And why something caused the engine to explode. We don't know if it was mechanical. We don't know if something got into the engine. No one really knows that yet, and they'll try to figure that out. But when an engine explodes, it's supposed to contain the explosion.
The engine itself.
The engine itself, and you shut it down, and then you, in theory, have 3 engines on this plane to get back to an airport. In this case, parts of the engine blew apart, and it apparently hit the fuselage. And when that happens, you can cut off hydraulic lines, you can cut off fuel lines, you can get into the fuel tank and cause an explosion. It makes it a much more difficult situation to handle, and it's not supposed to happen.
Well, you and I were talking earlier. I covered that United crash that went down in Sioux City, Iowa in 1989, and that was an uncontained engine failure that actually severed the hydraulic lines, and that plane flew without, miraculously, half the people ended up surviving,
that was
but
a miraculous
it killed
landing
over
in Sioux
100
City.
people in Sioux City. This, so obviously this is something that Qantas and I think Singapore has also grounded its fleet of A380s.
Right, 2 of the airlines that fly the 380, and there aren't that many airlines that fly it, especially for passengers. Singapore and Qantas have both grounded the 380. The airplane today had Rolls-Royce engines, and that's going to be the leading suspect in this. What happened to the engine and why did it explode? And the investigators they've picked up, I think, over 100 parts from over the islands of Indonesia, that engine having fallen apart. From pictures I have seen, there are parts embedded in the fuselage of the airplane. And so there's a lot of evidence, but there could have been a lot of evidence lost. And, it's not a good situation, not supposed to happen. I think those pilots are going to be found to have done a wonderful job in spending 90 minutes dumping fuel and landing safely.
While flying, not knowing, apparently there were reports that it sounded like an explosion of some type.
2 explosions, some passengers said. Now, a lot of the, in covering aviation for a while, a lot of the immediate reports from passengers turn out not to be real, but you have the same rough story here. There was an explosion or 2, there was smoke, there was yellow flame, orange flame. There's a lot of similarities among stories, so I think we can start putting some kind of idea together. That engine exploded, there was flame, and there were obviously pieces that flew off of that engine. It's pretty torn up.
All right, well, Andy, thanks so much for joining us. A disaster, obviously, that did not, fortunately, could have been a horrendous catastrophe.
Yeah, could have been hundreds of people dead.
There were almost 500 people on that airplane.
459, including crew.
All right, well, thanks very much for joining us. Really appreciate it. And now, CBS News White House correspondent Mark.